I made this diorama a couple months ago, but it's time for an upgrade. So today I'm going to show you all the steps that I take to improve this piece. The first thing that I need to do is make sure that this wall is level with this wall. And honestly, I didn't do the greatest job when I put this together. And I need to actually cut this so that this top brick line is actually completely gone. And then it should be level and we can start putting a roof on this thing. This is a Proxxon thermal cut hot wire foam cutting table that I use to cut this down to size with some accuracy. In order to get a level roof, we need level walls, and the Proxxon allows me to do that. But before we get to the roof, I'm going to spray paint some PLA 3D printed parts that are rafters in this case, and also some above window vents that you see here. I'm doing this before the roof install just to make things a little bit easier, so I have all my materials ready. I always spray paint my 3D printed parts with usually Rust-Oleum or Krylon spray paints, and then for something like this, I like to do a little bit of dry brushing on top of that. These are supposed to be sort of exhaust vents that are going to be placed above a window in a warehouse, so I definitely want them to appear dirty. And dry brushing is really good for achieving that sort of thing. It's also very easy to do. All you do is wipe some paint on the paper towel and then go ahead and apply it to your piece. One layer of dry brushing wasn't enough for me. I wanted these to look dirtier, so I went around the perimeter with a second layer of dry brushing and then also added some streaks throughout the piece. After that second layer, I was feeling really good about these, so I think they are good to install. Now what I'm going to do is use this Hot Wire Foam Factory Styro Goo applied to the backs of these vents and then put them over the windows. I like to use a scrap piece of XPS foam with this glue to make sure that I spread the glue evenly across the entire 3D printed part so we get even adhesion. And then I do the same exact process on the other window vent, just making sure that I've got a good solid hold on that piece in the bricks. This glue starts tacking up right away and only takes about 30 minutes to get a good hold. Now what I'm going to do is use the floor piece as a template and cut this to size. And the floor piece will be the exact same size as the roof because I'm going for just a little section of this building. The piece that I'm cutting is 2 feet wide, so my regular T-square is not big enough, so I love using one of these drywall T-squares to make sure that I get full coverage across the piece as I'm trying to outline my cuts. But then I switch back over to my T-square for control because it's actually 18 inches long, which is exactly the size of my T-square, and I go ahead and get a brand new utility knife, and I do multiple passes of it to get it cut out. Here's a quick little test to make sure that the roof is cut to the right size, and it is. I want to try something I haven't done before, so I'm going to do a wood roof with metal rafters. So right now, I'm cutting the wood pieces out of foam. I'm using a shifting lands jig to make sure that I have this cut to the exact size for each of these little wood beams, and that really helps me with my accuracy. Once all the wood beams were cut, I went ahead and put them all on the base, so I made sure that I had enough of them to apply them to the roof, just as a reference point. And then I decided it was time to magnetize the diorama to the roof piece that I wanted to install. If you're looking for an in-depth tutorial of magnetizing, I do have that on my channel, and you can check it out in the top right-hand corner. Now that it's magnetized, I'm going to flip this upside down, and then I'm going to remove the base piece. Doing it this way is just going to make my life a lot easier. So I go ahead and take my Hot Wire Foam Factory Styro Goo, and I apply it to the base using a scrap piece like I did earlier with the 3D printed parts. This is a much easier way to go than individually gluing each beam and trying to put it down. It also allows me to get really even coverage of the glue so I can ensure that these planks are not going to move over time. It's definitely a good idea to make things easier on yourself, especially when they're tedious, like putting these planks down, because if I rush through this, it's really going to make the piece suffer when it's completely finished. Once all of my planks are glued into place, I move on to texturing the foam in place. Years ago, my friend Terrafoamer gave me a great tip for creating wood texture that doesn't look like it is ripped, and that is using a wire brush dipped in water. And here's how it looks raw on the foam before any painting or anything like that. The next step is just to quickly base coat this using a light wood color. I'm using actually Rivera Tan here by Anita's. But color selection is one of the fun things about this, so have fun with it and choose what you like. And even after just the base coat, it's already starting to look like wood. Next up, I add several different washes to this piece. One is a brown wash, which I'm doing now, and then I also did a yellowish wash off camera before moving on to wood pre-stain and wood stain. And this is actually the same exact staining you would use to stain a piece of wood. You can do the same thing with XPS foam, which is really cool. I'm choosing to apply this with a regular paintbrush. You could use a cloth, you could use a foam brush, but no matter what, this is really going to make the wood look actually like it is wood, not foam. Also, no matter what you're doing, make sure that you keep yourself safe. I'm using a fume mask here to make sure that I don't breathe in the stain fumes or the pre-stain fumes, just to make sure that I'm healthy and keeping myself as safe as possible. It's really starting to look more like wood, but we're not done with this yet. Remember those rafters I spray painted at the start of the video? Well, now we're going to install them, and I have them mapped out where I want them on the layout of the ceiling. I'm once again using a scrap piece of foam to apply the Hotwire Foam Factory Styro Goo across the beams evenly so that they fully adhere and stay permanently on the piece. And just a few short minutes after applying them to the roof, they're actually solid on there already because of the glue tacking up so quickly. We're looking good on the inside ceiling portion of this, but I also want there to be an exterior roof. So I'm pasting down using hot glue some XPS foam ridges that are going to serve as the border of the roof. There's a little gap that occurred after I glued the XPS strips to the top of the roof that makes it look like it's not one single piece. So my fix for that is using lightweight wall spackle. I use this stuff all the time for this kind of thing, and it really helps to create a really nice continuous look. After this stuff dries for about 30 minutes, it's going to be ready to paint, and so I use an acrylic paint on top of this to base coat the area. Once I get the perimeter done, then I move on to the rest of the rooftop and I paint the entire thing with this color. And what I'm using is Apple Barrel Granite Gray. If you don't know Apple Barrel, you can get this paint at Walmart. It's very cheap acrylic paint. That's really good for diorama work. Once that paint dries, I move on to applying a black wash with a wet paper towel. I've got several videos on my channel about how to create realistic concrete out of XPS foam, and this is one of the main ways that you can do this, and it's so easy. If you want an in-depth look, watch those videos, but all you have to do is dab the black wash across the piece in several different layers, and you'll get a bunch of different colors and tones. Another thing I like to do to up the realism is use one of these water droppers to create a black wash drip down the sides of my pieces to kind of simulate rainwater or just dirty water that's weathered over time. Now I'm going to turn my attention back to the ceiling portion, the inside portion of this piece, and I'm going to use my dual action airbrush to paint this. My apologies for not getting a better shot of what I was doing here, but I'm using a Vallejo mahogany brown to weather all the areas of the wood ceiling and also the rafters. I want to make sure that it looks like there was a warehouse, there's debris, there's dust, there's grime that rises up and dirties up the ceiling. And here is a better look of what it actually looked like when I'm done. So I'm really liking the way this looks. I think it really adds to the realism of the piece. Because I got such great results inside, I want to also do some weathering on the outside to make this concrete look even more weathered. So I'm doing that with the airbrush the same way I did on the inside. Adding this method in on top of the other paint methods that we did is really going to sell the piece. And we're done. So here's a look at the final piece, which I'm so excited about. And I really hope that you all think that this looks as cool as I do. Thanks for sticking with me to see how I improved this diorama today. If you liked the video, please hit subscribe and look forward to some more diorama content coming at you on this channel. Thanks. I'll see you in the next episode.
Vasco Toys. Action figure dioramas and props.